We're ready? All right, excellent. Hi guys, how's everybody doing today? My name is Emily Kleinkammer. I'm an Assistant Director and Learning Specialist here at ASPSA. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about tutoring math and science and some of the unique challenges that our students face. My background, I was a math major in my undergrad, so I have a lot of experience with math, a little less so with science, but I think some of the techniques can be sort of translated pretty well. I spent a lot of time during my graduate degree tutoring statistics and some calculus and pre-calculus and that kind of thing. And then in my current role here, I do a lot of work with the Stat 311 class and the Math 105 class. Those are like the two that a lot of my students take, so I do a lot of work in those classes. So hopefully my experience can sort of inform some of the things that you guys see. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the techniques that you can use to work with our population of students and really help them in these areas. We're going to start just by sort of talking about some general tutoring things and then go into some of the more unique challenges that our students face. A lot of our students who aren't interested in math and science are required to take math and science classes. So all of our sociology majors have to take statistics, all of our PRT majors have to take Math 105. So these are students who aren't comfortable with this material, would definitely not seek out these classes if they didn't have to. And so a lot of them go into these classes with a lot of anxiety, probably from their high school or middle school years. And we really want to be the ones that support them and that can really have an impact on their success. So one of the things that you can do to sort of keep yourself and the student engaged is to use this tutor cycle. It's especially good at the beginning of the semester when you're just getting to know a student, kind of figuring out what works best for them, what works best for you. You're still building that relationship. This is sort of a good thing to keep in mind to keep you both engaged. So you start the tutor cycle by greeting the student, right? They walk into the session, say hello, you want to set the climate, you want them to know that this is a safe place where they can be vulnerable and ask lots of questions and where they can learn. And then you want to ask them, like, what do you want to work on? Identify the task, give them some autonomy so they feel like they're sort of in control of the session and you're not saying, well, this is what we're going to work on today. You weren't in that class, you don't know what they're learning. So give them sort of the opportunity to lead the session and tell you what they want to accomplish. Restate so that they can clarify and elaborate. This is especially good for any of our students who have learning disabilities. Being able to clarify what they want and you restating it is really helpful for them. And then identify underlying processes. So if they say, hey, in Math 105 today, we talked about compound interest and it went totally over my head. This formula is so long, I don't know how to do it. You can say right at the beginning of the session, hey, you know what, we'll go over this. Compound interest is actually really similar to simple interest and you seem to understand that really well. It's just interest upon interest. Let's go over it. We don't have to worry about the formula right now. So identifying those underlying processes right at the beginning is going to help students come to a deeper understanding. It's going to help them engage in deeper learning and not just that surface level learning where they're memorizing formulas and then just throwing numbers into a formula. Okay, so the second part of the tutor cycle is setting the agenda. Okay, so once you've decided, oh, we're going to go over compound interest, let's figure out how exactly we're going to do that. Okay, so maybe the professor put up a bunch of practice problems on Moodle, or maybe the student has really good notes and they just want to go over the notes, or they have specific questions from their notes, or maybe you are going to put some problems on the board for them, or you're going to do some student collaboration, right? So maybe you have a group session and the other student in the group is like, no, I totally got compound interest, I'll help you, and they can sort of work together a little bit and you're going to guide that. So there's lots of different things that you can do. Remember that agendas are flexible, so maybe you guys are really doing well with the practice problems and you don't want to go on to anything else, and that's fine. And then you can set the agenda orally, or you can even write it on the board. Like, okay, first we're going to go over the notes, then we're going to do some practice problems, then you guys are going to try some problems on your own, or something like that. You can just write that right on the board. Some of our tutor rooms have nice, new, big boards, so take advantage of that and use them. They're really cool. I'm really jealous. So use the board, and they're really big, so you'll be able to put like an agenda on one side and do lots of problems on the other side. Okay, third part of the tutor cycle is addressing the task. Obviously, this is going to be the biggest part of the session. It's going to take up the majority of the time. Follow the agenda, adjust if necessary. The biggest thing that I want to communicate to you guys today is make sure that you're connecting what you're doing to underlying processes. That's how students engage in deeper level learning. That's how they're going to get to a test, see a problem that doesn't look exactly like their practice problems, and still be able to figure it out on their own. Ask lots of questions to help students come to their own understanding. That's a very powerful way of learning when you come to your own understanding. So try to guide them, but if you can ask lots of questions so they're coming to it themselves, that's really great. Sometimes students are going to get frustrated and you need to answer their questions though. So that's a sort of balancing act where you're going to be sort of throwing questions back at them, and then sometimes you're just going to have to explain something, or you're just going to have to sort of answer their questions because you don't want them to get really frustrated, okay? You don't want them to feel like you hold all the knowledge and you're not going to give them any of the knowledge, right? Don't do that. And then avoid the temptation to fall into the instructor role, right? So it's easy, especially if it's material you're really familiar with, to be like, oh, I know how to do this. Let me just show you. I will do all the work on the board and you can take notes, right? They're not in class. This is their time to be active learners. They should be up at the board doing the problems. They should be the ones who are doing the work. You are there to guide them, to explain, to ask questions, that kind of thing. You're not there to be their instructor, okay? You don't get paid enough for that. Okay, fourth part of the tutor cycle is to check for understanding, right? So you've done all this work, you've gone through all these problems, you've gone through their notes, whatever you did during that session. You want to make sure that they understand what you guys went over. So there's a couple of ways to do this. You can have students teach you, so you can say, okay, like we spent all this time on compound interest, go to the board, tell me what you know, right? Or you can just quiz them on the material, put a problem up on the board and say, okay, you're on your own this time. I want to see that you can do this on your own, right? You're going to have to do it by yourself on the test, so here's a good opportunity for you to do it right now, okay? Have the student connect what they just learned to previous material from the class, right? Okay, so tell me, how does compound interest compare to simple interest? If you were going to take out a loan, would you rather have compound interest or simple interest? If you were going to deposit a bunch of money into a savings account, would you rather have compound interest or simple interest, right? Connecting that thing, connecting what they learned to other things that they learn and to outside things as well, okay? And then you want to close the session, right? So identify tasks that the student should accomplish before the next session. So, okay, we went over all these practice problems. Your job is to do the homework now, right? You have 5 web assignment problems you have to do. That's your job before you come in on Wednesday. And then if you have any questions about that, we can go over it, right? And then you want to evaluate the success of the session. What techniques worked? What didn't? What works particularly well for this student or group of students? It's not going to be the same for everyone. And then how can you modify the session next time, right? So maybe the board work worked really well for that student, and the other things that you did didn't work. So, okay, now I know for this particular student, we're going to do lots of board work because they really seemed to like that. They were really engaged. They liked being up at the board. They liked playing with the new glass boards. They were into that. So that's something you want to incorporate in future sessions. And then you can also include the student in the evaluation. I ask my students a lot, like, hey, like, did that explanation work for you? Like, did you understand that? Did you feel like you got something out of that? Normally, they're going to be pretty honest with you, and they'll say, yeah, like, I get it now, or no, I'm still confused. Can you explain this to me again? They'll be honest with you, so you can sort of include the student in that. And find out, what did they like, right? Did you like doing the problems at the board? Did you like when we were just sitting and looking at the notes and talking about it? What helped you the most? Because students learn differently. Every student is going to be different. And a lot of them know, I know what works for me. You know I need to be at the board doing lots of problems to come to understanding. So they'll tell you that. Okay, so I have a couple of session best practices for you. First thing, reinforce correct procedures or answers. So if they're doing a good job, tell them they're doing a good job, right? And you want to always praise the process not the outcome, right? So tell them, hey, you're working really hard. I appreciate like how much thought you're putting into this. Like, I know this is a difficult subject and you're really like tackling it. Praise the process, okay? Don't just praise, hey, you got an A in a test, that was good, right? We want to praise the process. Teach concepts over processes. Again, like teach them the underlying concepts. So when they get to an exam, they're not just throwing numbers in a formula, right? They really understand what they're doing. A lot of their exams are going to be word problems. So it's not just wrote, you know, algebra or whatever it is. They have to really understand. So you might have a student who like, if they have the same problem over and over again, they know exactly what to do, step 1, step 2, step 3. But if the professor changes something a little bit on the exam, they don't know what to do. And so if you can teach concepts, that's when the student's really going to be able to, you know, take what they know and apply it to that problem. Link old information to new information. So our brains work really well when we can link things together. So if you can link what they have learned previously to what they're learning now, whether it's in that same class or in a different class, I think that's really powerful. Help student find ways to logically organize information. So just like, hey, compound interest is like simple interest in these ways. When they're linking those things together and finding logical ways that they connect, they're going to be better off. Encourage elaboration, analysis, and critical thinking. These are college students. They're going to be expected to engage in all 3 of those things, so you really need to encourage that. And then encourage them to go beyond surface level thinking. Again, they're not just memorizing a formula and dumping numbers into it. They're understanding those concepts. They're going beyond that. Okay, I want to talk a little bit about exam review for a second. Obviously, we want to start early with exam review, not like the night before. Use the study guide if one has been provided. Make sure you get it approved by a full-time staff member. Use WebAssigns that have already been graded. Sometimes they'll put like a practice exam on WebAssign, so if that's been graded, you can pull that up. The answers are right there. Have them do the problems, okay? Make up problems based on the homework. Sometimes I'll look at their homework and just change the numbers or change the wording a little bit, change a little bit. They can do those right on the board. Help students make connections between concepts. Use visual aids, especially for like chemistry and biology. So like have them draw the diagram of the cell, or have them, you know, draw the skeleton or something like that and label parts. Visual aids are really powerful. That's a really good way to learn, so use those. Again, let the student take the lead. Give them an opportunity to say, hey, I know all of these things, but I really need you to help me go over this. You don't want to waste time in a session going over things that the student already knows. But you might not know what they know. So give them the opportunity to ask questions. And then especially like as time is getting closer to the exam, right? That's when time becomes really valuable and you don't want to be wasting time. Okay. And then post-exam. So this is often like a struggle for tutors. The student has just taken an exam, they don't have any new material, and the tutor's like, I don't know what to do with the student, like, we can't really go over anything. These are just like a couple of suggestions. First, ask the student to assess their performance. So say like, how did this test go? Let's like sit down and talk about this for a little bit. And if the student says, the test went really well, I totally killed it, I know I got an A, ask them why they think that, and then what did they do to be so prepared for the test? So you can continue to do those things, right? Go over any questions that they think they missed. So sometimes my students will come in and be like, question 4, like, I know it was on this, there were these words in it, I can't remember, and then we'll just kind of go back through the WebAssigns and usually find a question just like it, and then we'll go over that. So you can kind of do that, and I think that's really helpful because the student's going to be tested on that material again. They're going to have a midterm and a final. So if you can like go over that material again before they're tested on it again, I think that's really helpful. And then show how that information they learned for this exam is important for future topics, right? In math and science, everything is connected together, right? And so what they were tested on in test 2 is going to lead right into test 3. So talk a little bit. You don't have to start going over things that they're going to go over in class like the next day or whatever, but you can sort of just put it in their head, like, oh, like we we like really went over this topic for test 2. This is how that's going to lead into stuff that you're going to learn this week or next week or that kind of thing. Okay. And then a lot of times we have students who go into the exam, they're like, I know I'm going to get an A, I know this stuff cold, I'm really excited. They come back and they're like, I didn't even recognize those questions. I thought I was in the wrong class, right? So how do we sort of combat this? And I see it a lot, and I'm assuming that you guys see it a lot too. And what's happening here is students aren't learning concepts, right? They're just learning, I'm going to pick out these 3 keywords, then I pull this formula in, I put these things in the formula, and I get an answer, right? They're not actually learning anything. And so that's where we really need to drill down and make sure they're going beyond surface level thinking, beyond surface level learning, right? So it also might be that you guys have just been helping them too much, right? And they're not used to doing problems on their own. And so they need that prompt in their ear, right, to complete these problems. And without that, they're totally handicapped. So make sure that you're giving students an opportunity to complete problems on their own. Right? So maybe that's, hey, you need to go home and do this homework by yourself. Or at the end of the session, we always put a problem on the board and I sit back and twiddle my thumbs while you do the problem. Right? And so they're getting opportunities to be in a test-like situation where they have to do those problems without any assistance. Maybe they're successfully putting on a facade of knowing, right? Maybe every time they come in and they ask you to go over something, it's something they know they already know. Right? And so you think, hey, this kid's a genius, right? Every time you ask me how to do something, we go over it and then it's perfect. He knows exactly what to do, right? But maybe they're doing that because they're afraid to show you that there are things that they don't know, right? So maybe they're a student who like never quite learned fractions and they are not going to let you know that they don't know how to do fractions, right? And so they're going to avoid that at all costs. And that's a situation where you need to sort of talk to the student and say like, you know what, like I'm concerned that you're only bringing me things you know how to do. Let's go over this other stuff, okay? And I've seen this happen a lot. Maybe they're not working or studying outside of sessions, right? Our students are busy. Sometimes they go home and play video games instead of doing their homework, right? So make sure you're encouraging students, hey, these 2 hours during the week that you meet with me for this class, this is not the only work you need to be doing for this class. You need to be doing something outside, especially when it comes to exam time. 2 hours to study for a test is certainly not enough. You need to be doing things outside the session, okay? And that's a good thing to put in your reports, and that'll go to the advisors, and so they can encourage the students to do the same. Any questions so far? Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about some challenges. There's going to be some unique challenges for you as math and science tutors, okay? And the biggest thing is unpreparedness, okay? So a lot of students have really inconsistent K-12 education in math and science, right? So maybe they took an algebra class their freshman year, and then their school didn't require them to take math until their senior year, and then they took a pre-calculus class that they kind of slept through because it was their senior year, and they knew that they were going to be playing volleyball at NC State, so they were like, whatever, right? Or maybe they took 3 years of math in high school, and then they didn't take anything senior year, and then they put off taking math at NC State for 3 years, so by the time it's their senior year, they haven't taken a math class in 4 years, right? And they can't even remember order of operations, right? Another thing is students have a real unfamiliarity with basic concepts. So if their middle school education wasn't in math or science, wasn't real good, they're going to miss a lot of the things that they need to know, even for the lower level math and science classes, right? And that's really going to handicap their ability to be successful, right? It's really hard to pass pre-calculus if you don't know how to FOIL, right? Time between taking math classes, we talked a little bit about that. And then unfamiliarity with college pedagogy, right? Maybe you have a student who went to a small private high school, they had individualized attention from all their teachers, they sat in a calculus class with 12 other students, the teacher knew their name, knew when they didn't turn in their homework, called their parents when they didn't turn in their homework, right? Then they show up here and they sit down in a calculus class with 300 other students, right? That's a really intimidating environment, and a lot of students are going to shut down in that environment, and then they're not going to learn anything, right? So these, for me, are like the 4 big things that really, really hinder our students in math and science classes. And then low self-efficacy, right? So all of those things that we just talked about might lead to low self-efficacy. So self-efficacy is just a person's own feelings and thoughts about their ability to succeed in a particular task, right? So for our students, they might have really high self-efficacy for their ability to throw a touchdown or swim a 500 or do a bar routine, right? But in math, they have really low self-efficacy, right? Because maybe some teacher told them at some point, you're just not good at math, and that's fine, right? And so they go in and they think, I'm just not good at this, it's not even worth trying, right? So students with low self-efficacy tend to set low goals for themselves, right? And so they go into a math class not thinking, I can get an A in this class if I work really hard. They go into a math class thinking, well, if I can just get by with a C, that's fine, right? And when you set the bar low for yourself, like, that's as high as you're gonna go, right? They give up easily in the face of challenges, so when they're really struggling with something, they're not gonna persist, right? They're gonna throw the pen down and say, I'm done with this, I don't care, I don't wanna learn this, right? They put on a facade of knowing, and they don't wanna feel vulnerable, okay? And some things that I've noticed with students with really low self-efficacy is they'll say things like, I'm just not good at this, like, I can't get better, I'm not good at this, I'm just gonna try to get through it, right? They talk about how they struggled with math in elementary and middle school, so like those things lead to, I'm just not good at math, right? They're afraid to seem vulnerable, so they won't tell you the things that they're struggling with. They won't tell you, there are some things that I know I should know, but I don't, right? And they have no confidence in their abilities, and that handicaps their ability to try, right? So you see a student who's like poised at the board and like doesn't even want to try to write something down, that's a student with really low self-efficacy. Okay. And so how do we address these challenges, right? One of the things that we can do is review the basics for students. So if you have a student and you know, like, this student missed something in 7th grade, right, and doesn't know how to factor, or those types of things, you can review those. And there's lots of information in the math lab about this stuff, so if you want to go in and like look at a poster on Canvas, that kind of thing. But these are some of the things, particularly in math, that I've noticed that students really struggle with. Fractions, I don't know, like, they seem to struggle with fractions. Adding fractions, multiplying fractions, dividing fractions, reducing fractions, they don't want any part of it. Percentages and decimals, I see this a lot with the Math 105 class, because there's obviously, like, there's a lot of interest and there's a lot of percentages, and you have to go from percentage to the decimal, they don't like that. Order of operations, people really struggle with that. Basic algebra. Substitution, factoring and foiling are another thing. I have seen like so many students solving quadratic equations by just trying to like subtract over the x. It's not good. And then exponents, they don't remember any of the exponent rules. So going over these things with them, especially at the beginning of the semester when things are kind of slow and this class isn't moving at a clip like it is in the middle of the semester, takes some time to go over some of these things. And this is also a good thing post-exam when you have some downtime. Like, just say like, hey, what are like 3 things that we can go over that are gonna help you for the next exam? Like, you've got a lot of graphing coming up. Let's make sure we know how to factor quadratic equations and stuff like that. Okay? And then these are some science things like basic elements and the periodic table, parts of the cell, human body systems, cellular reproduction, DNA and genetics, tectonic plates. We have a lot of students who take like the geology classes and they kind of forget about all that stuff that you kind of learn in like earth science in 8th grade. Earth's atmosphere and core. Those are some of the things that I've noticed. Again, I don't work with a lot of the science classes, so if there's other things, like let me know. I'll add them to this list. Okay. Another thing that we can do to help our students is encourage autonomy. So I talked about this a little bit when I talked about just asking a student, like, what do you want to work on during this session? Like, what is important to you? What are the things that you're confused about? But I think this is really important because we want to encourage our students to take control of their own learning, right? We want to make sure that we're creating independent learners here across the board, whether it's in a math class or a science class or a humanities class. We want to make sure that we're creating independent learners. So encouraging students to take control of their learning and helping them to develop strategies to do so is really important, right? So encourage them to review the material before they walk into your session so they know exactly what they want to go over, right? If they take that time, you're not wasting time going over all of this stuff that they already know, right? Have them come to sessions with questions. Encourage them to interact with the instructor, even if it's just at the beginning of the class, introducing themselves, so in the middle of the semester when they do have questions, the professor can at least put a face to a name, right? And again, you guys aren't the instructor. You're not expected to know every single little detail of what is being taught in the class. And so if a student knows the instructor and is comfortable with the instructor, they have that resource available to them. They can walk into office hours and feel comfortable saying, I don't understand how to do this, or can we go over this, or I'm really nervous about this test coming up. What are some things I should study, right? And then keep tutoring sessions low stakes, right? So this is an opportunity for students to fail spectacularly, and there are literally no consequences, right? So often students are scared to do something wrong, right? And especially our athletes who are so successful in other parts of their life, they don't want to show vulnerability as a student, right? And so make sure you're keeping sessions low stakes. You're not pointing out in a dramatic way when they make mistakes, right? Mistakes are part of learning, and they should be part of learning, and so make sure, keep it a judgment-free zone, right? Okay. And then we want to encourage a growth mindset. If you're interested in growth mindsets, I do a whole presentation on it. There's a book, it's really interesting. But a growth mindset is the idea that intelligence isn't fixed, that students can learn more and get smarter the more they work, right? So students with a fixed mindset believe that intelligence is fixed, right? It doesn't matter how hard I work, it doesn't matter how much time I put into this math class, I'm never gonna get any smarter, right? And so we want students to have a growth mindset because that's gonna encourage them to work harder. They're gonna see that they can be successful through hard work, right? So we wanna encourage that. So first thing we can do is praise the process, not the outcome. Again, if they get a test back and they got a really good grade, that's awesome and we're happy about that, but we want to praise the process that got them that grade, not necessarily the grade, right? So instead of saying, good job, you got an A, we should say, good job, you did all that hard work to get an A, right? And we spent all that extra time, and I know you spent time outside of these sessions, and that's great. See how that's contributing to your success, right? Encourage working hard as a means to achievement, right? So you're not going to get an A just because you're smart. You're going to get an A because you worked at it, right? Encourage students to set achievable micro goals. So even if that's, hey, I'm going to spend an hour tonight and an hour tomorrow really drilling down into this homework because this is a tough subject for me and this is like a tough content, and so I'm going to spend these hours working on this, just little micro goals and little things that they can achieve. Encourage the value of the learning process. So I'm pretty enthusiastic about learning and I try to make that rub off on my students. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it is incredibly satisfying when you are working at a problem for 10 minutes, it's really hard, somebody has a light bulb moment and figures it out and gets the right answer. There's no better feeling in this world, right? So great. So encourage just that is a fun process. That is a good thing. It's fun to engage in that, encourage that. And then collaborate, right? So collaborate with the student. If you guys are trying to work through something together, we'll talk about this in a minute, collaborate with each other, show them that hey, I don't remember this. Can you tell me what you learned about this in class? And together you guys can come to some understanding. And that's gonna show the student that they have value too. Any questions? Okay, so everything seems perfect, right? You guys are gonna go out, all of our students are gonna get A's, it's gonna be great. Probably not. There are some roadblocks to success, right? So first thing is disengaged students, right? So like, we would all be amazing tutors if our students were so great and like came into the tutoring session, we're like, I want to go over this, I'm really excited to learn, I love math, I love science, right? We'd all be perfect tutors, right? But sometimes we have students who are just disengaged, whether it's they just are not feeling it that day, they hate math, they hate science, they don't want to be here, whatever it is, right? So I think there's a couple of reasons why students become disengaged. First, sometimes they're just tired, right? They have crazy schedules. They have practiced like a million hours a day. They're not sleeping. Especially freshmen don't really understand the value of sleep sometimes. So they show up to tutoring sessions and they're like barely awake, right? Sometimes they're not paying attention to class. So they walk into your tutoring session and you say, hey, what do you want to go over? They're like, I have no idea because I was not paying attention. I was on my phone during class, or I was talking to my teammate, or I was daydreaming, right? And so they have nothing to say because they didn't know what was going on in class, right? Sometimes they're confused and they don't want to feel vulnerable, right? They don't want to tell you, like, I sat in a 45-minute class and I did not understand one thing that professor said, right? And sometimes they just don't want to admit that, and that's okay, okay? So they're using disengagement as a defense mechanism, right? Or sometimes they don't know where to begin. They've never taken a class like this before, and they don't, maybe they're understanding the content sort of, but they're not really understanding the way the professor has presented the content. Maybe they haven't printed out the PowerPoints, maybe they haven't taken notes, they're just not sure how to like approach a class like this, right? So how do we combat these things? If they're tired, I usually say get some water, take a lap, start sleeping more, right? Sometimes we'll just walk around the building a little bit to like get their energy up, that works. If they're not paying attention to class and they have no idea what's going on, we usually pull up the syllabus or pull up the homework, and then we can start at least talking through what they're going over in class. If you look at the syllabus and you say, oh, you guys are going over graphing this week, right? You guys can start looking at the homework, looking at the book, seeing if they took any notes, and just start like reviewing that content, right? If you think that they just don't want to tell you what they don't know, help them feel comfortable in that session, right? Have to help them feel comfortable making mistakes, be really patient with them. Don't ever act surprised by gaps in their knowledge. So we all have gaps in our knowledge, and don't ever be like, oh my God, I can't believe you don't know how to add fractions, right? You want to make sure that they feel vulnerable, or they feel comfortable feeling vulnerable, and they're comfortable saying, you know what, like, I remember, like, I never understood that for real, right? And they're going to need to know that. If you can tell that they're just, like, don't know how to approach this class, start from the beginning. Look at the homework, look at the PowerPoints, textbooks, use the tutor cycle to kind of get through the session, and then help them with some strategies for being in class, right? So, like, hey, like, I see the professor has posted all these PowerPoints. You need to print those out before you go to class. Don't try to write down everything on the PowerPoint. Use that as a guide. Write down what the professor says, right? Go over some of those study skills that are going to help them be successful in the classroom.